Quite frequently, you'll want something to happen after some amount of delay. Sometimes this wait is short, and it would be pretty easy to just use some repeaters. Other times, though, you'll want a delay that's fairly long. For those longer waits, it can be helpful to know how to make a delay circuit, or what I'm calling a timer. There are many ways to make a timer, each with different strengths and weaknesses, so let's start with something easy. It's repeater. This is the easy one. A signal goes in the back and comes out the front after a short delay. This can be changed to 1, 2, 3, or 4 redstone ticks, or 1/4 of a second. You probably know what a repeater is. It's really good for short delays, like up to around 15 ticks, but anything longer than a few seconds, and you'll just have a mess of repeaters taking up a bunch of space. That's why I conveniently have an entire rest of the video to show you some ways to make longer delays more efficiently, such as these next two timers, hopper timers and despawn timers. These two take notes from their clock counterparts, working based on the same concepts but not turning themselves back on. Because of this, you're able to activate them when you want and have a signal pop out after some time. For a quick rundown, hopper clocks work by pushing a redstone block over two hoppers, locking one of them at any given time. When the unlocked hopper empties, the redstone block gets pushed over to that hopper, and the previously locked hopper can start pushing all the items back over. Typically, these are built using two sticky pistons in order to avoid pistons not updating, because that would stop the clock. By replacing one of these sticky pistons with a regular piston, though, the clock gets turned into a timer that starts whenever the sticky piston gets a block update. This is just because when the piston pushes over the redstone block, the sticky piston doesn't extend because piston arms are immovable. When the piston retracts its arm, the sticky piston still doesn't extend because it basically doesn't realize it can. It's asleep and you need to give it a little poke for it to wake up and reevaluate its surroundings, see that it can extend, and actually extend. The despawn timer is easier to wrap your head around. An item gets dropped and activates a pressure plate. After 5 minutes, the item despawns and stops activating the pressure plate. And when this happens, the redstone torch turns on. A pulse shortener reduces the length of the pulse, so it's not constant. These are pretty easy to set up and give you 5 minutes really easily. Unfortunately, if you want anything other than 5 minutes, it won't be as useful just because of how item despawning works. These two were both connected to clocks, but if you get a little creative, there are a lot more ways to make a long delay. For example, you can use a minecart running along a rail. That takes time, and you can get a redstone signal when it's done, so you can make a timer with it. This method can be fairly space-consuming due to the rail requirements, but to get a little more time out of your rails, you can waterlog them and make the minecart move a little slower. Implementing verticality can also help. Dropping the minecart through some cobwebs will slow it down for quite a bit, making the overall delay of the system longer. This way of doing things can even work in your favor if you just want things to happen at predefined intervals, because you can just put detector rails along the track before the end. The minecart will start its journey, run over the detector rails in sequence at same times each time, and finish off its journey by either returning to its starting point or being brutally destroyed by a machine specifically to cause its demise, or just a cactus. Not a fan of minecart murder? Well, there are still some other options to go through. If we revisit one of our earlier designs, the despawn timer, and change it up a bit, it's possible to make timers shorter than 5 minutes by passing the item through cobwebs and sensing it with a tripwire. With this method, we can even pick up the item when it's done. If you want to see something more original to me, then behold, I give you the buoyancy and fluid flow timers. I thought these up in an effort to make a timer that resets quickly for a game I was working on, and while I didn't end up using them, I still think they're pretty cool and probably useful in some niche scenario. These both work by manipulating water, but in different ways. The fluid flow timer has a fluid blocked by some pistons by default, and if you input power, the pistons retract, allowing the fluid to flow. Eventually, the fluid reaches the end of the line, where there's an observer to make an output pulse. If the input signal stops at any point during the process, though, the pistons will re-extend and the system will reset without outputting anything. The buoyancy timer works on mob buoyancy instead of fluid dynamics. By default, there's a cow sitting at the bottom of a test tube. When the system receives a signal, the tube fills with water due to the wall of dispensers, and the cow starts floating upwards because that's what they do in water source blocks. When the cow reaches the top of the tube, it triggers a tripwire and gives you your output. Similar to the other design, this one also resets quickly, this time by reactivating all of the dispensers to take back all the water. Putting a soft landing for your cow is recommended, otherwise the timer will likely stop functioning after a few uses. In all honesty, I don't really know if these last two fit the description of a timer. Yes, they do delay an output by some kind of time, but their main purpose is more of a length check, only outputting a signal if the input was turned on for long enough. In that way, it's kind of a timer, but also not really. I still decided to put them in this video though, because A, it's my video and I want to show off my stuff, and B, these two may turn out to be really handy to someone watching, so I wanted to share. Also, C, I don't know when else I would show these, so here you go. Now, this entire video I've been talking about different ways to make timers, but now it's time I tell you some example scenarios where you might want to use one. As a general overview and quick refresher, timers are helpful when you want to introduce delay in your system. Most of the time you input a signal, and the timer outputs a signal after a delay. For some more specific examples, timers are able to turn something off after it's been turned on, like if you want a farm turned on for a limited time or part of a pulse extender. Let complicated redstone systems process inputs before continuing to interact with it in order to prevent things breaking or working incorrectly. Reactivate themselves, making a clock. It's really easy to turn on most of these by just feeding the output back into the input or making some small adjustments. Make sure any disposable item entities used within any system despawn before starting up again. The despawn timer is especially well suited to this for fairly obvious reasons. And you can also just use these timers to mess with people by making them wait for something. That's all the time I've got, so outro, I guess. A quick note I want to make: when looking for different designs for delay circuits online, I noticed that the term timer is sometimes used to refer to clocks, so I apologize for any confusion that may have caused. If you clicked on this video looking for the things that make an output repeatedly at regular intervals, go check my clock video in the playlist, and possibly in the card in the top right if I remember to do that. Apart from that, I've got nothing else. Have fun doing some redstone.